Hi, everyone. Welcome to all of our life members worldwide. I'm pleased to be hosting today Dr. Habib Chamoun-Nicolas. He's joining us today from his home in Texas for today's fire chat. Habib is an American, Mexican, Lebanese professor, lecturer, and corporate consultant specialized in negotiation. He's the author of several books on that subject, and the focus of today's talk is around his book titled Negotiate Like a Phoenician. What I would like to do today is explore really the skills of the Phoenician civilization, which spanned the Mediterranean and beyond for almost 1,500 years, and try to draw some ideas and principles applicable to our current times. Our talk is neither about the Phoenician history or politics or heritage. It's rather looking at principles of negotiation and how they were successfully used by the Phoenician. And please, during this 1 hour, do send your questions, and I will try to tackle them as we go along. Welcome, Dr. Habib. I would just jump in and ask you a simple question. Tell us something about the Phoenicians that we don't know, because a lot of us do know some stuff about them.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Life, for inviting me, and Souheil for coordinating this. And let me just share with you my screen here. And can you see this video now? I mean, I want to show you a quick video. Can you see that on the screen? Yes.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I want to show you a quick video, and I think probably I want to ask at the end if everybody knows about that, or not. Let me show you. Okay, you saw, and I I don't know, I'm almost guessing maybe one or two people know about this. Did anybody probably not know? You can raise your hands if you want, you know.
Go ahead.
Anyway, that's Cadiz, Spain, and that was my driver, you know, from childhood when I was a teenager, because I got to see those sarcophagus, and then I was invited now, which I'm not a teenager anymore, and I was invited when they discover a whole Phoenician behind a theater, and that's the result. You know, actually, it's the best Phoenician museum that I've seen in my life, you know, all over. And in Lebanon, yes, there is so many places, Souheil. I was surprised, but they don't take care of them. And I think Lebanon could be exactly like Cadiz in the sense that they have a lot of tourism for, you know, history. So we are not talking about history. We're going to make sense of history. That's the idea. And like making business out of history, you know, that's what Cadiz is doing. Lebanon can do that in the future. You know, there's so many places that are underexploited. In other words, I mean, it is a museum. It's a walking museum, the whole country, you know, and we have so many beautiful places there that we need to improve that. And so in the Phoenicians, and what we probably don't know, and I'll just show you a quick slide, you know, what we probably don't know. I mean, you know that they were, you know, come from purple because the Greek colors Phoenicians for the purple color of the murex, and also why the Phoenicians? Because there are so many kings, so many legacies that we have, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about something that maybe you don't know. I'm going to go to this here. You know, they did business with the Etruscans, you know, the Etruscans in Italy. I mean, if somebody knows history, my point with this is they didn't not only the business, but they also were so important in the Etruscan culture that the most important tablets of history of the Etruscans are in Phoenician. The first one, the first golden tablet is in Phoenician, and the other ones are in Etrurian, okay, which was the Etruscan. And then the other one is they modified the alphabet. They did so many things for all the colonies that they were negotiating with, other than just doing business. And so just to, as an example there, you know, what I take out of that is that not only they deal and will in business, but also they exchange culture and they give more than they receive. And that's the basis of the negotiation principles of the Phoenicians, you know, and we'll go into that in a second. But not only they did that in Etruria, they also did it in Malta and everywhere, to the point that they made rich their clients. If you make your clients rich, then they will make you rich, right? But they start with their clients, not with, and that's the problem that we have today. Everybody's so selfish about themselves. And probably that's also one of the parts of the failures of some Phoenicians of the diaspora, right? That they become so selfish that they forget their identity and they don't know who they are, you know, but that's a more philosophical question, right? But the point is that that was the essence, you know, and if you ask me, in Malta, there is also the Rosetta Stone. It has a Phoenician inscription as well as Greek. Why do they have a Phoenician inscription if they were only merchants? It doesn't make sense, right? So it's more than that. They went beyond that, and that will take us to the third type of negotiation when we talk about it. I don't know if that gives you a quick, because
Thanks.
The history, you know, but we're not going to talk too much.
We're not going to go with history. Thank you, Habib. I think that was a great introduction and gave us, I mean, something that's quite for many years, a lot of things we can talk about. One thing that comes to mind is really, what are the tactics? I mean, what is the basis? What are the principles of Phoenician negotiation? If you were to summarize it in few words,
you know,
what are they? Are they any different than?
It's a great question, because when we did the research, we actually dive into history and find out what did they do? Why are they were so great? And we find out that they created tradables, and we'll go into that in a little while. But the point is that just the principles that they have, I want to show you here so that you can see it, but at the same time, well, there are some of their strategies was to have a solid product base. They were, if they didn't, let's face it, they just had the cedars of Lebanon and that's it. And the murex, from the sea. So they didn't have too many products, but what did they do? They went overseas, all over the world. They conquered the Mediterranean by commercial dealings, and they locate centrally everywhere. So they went all the way to Cadiz, and then they came back to Lebanon, where they were setting posts of dealing and willing, selling and purchasing, and they located there locally, and as well as they expand geographically. But they have so many different products, and so they will sell the products of their clients. And also they fare really, there was a just price. It's not a win-win, it's justice on the price. It's not only I win and you win, but also it has to be fair. Sometimes people forget about that. And these are the principles. They come from Sanford Halls and other studios. They create partnership everywhere, and also they trade internationally. That's what I mean, if you are in the pandemic, you need to get out. You need to do things differently, resolve difference peacefully. They were great peacemakers, and that's what I mentioned many times, that I will give them 3 Nobel Prizes to the Phoenician civilization, because they were doing business peacefully, as well as they create the model of economy was so different that they will make rich Barcelona and other places where they went. And so it's so great that I will give them the Nobel Prize in economy, and not only that, also in literature. And people ask me why. They invented the alphabet, and the Greek recognized it, because there is a dilemma in history that they were not, and they were. But I went to Athens and I saw it with my own eyes. In Athens, they recognized the Phoenician alphabet was given to the Greeks. Free, by the way. It was a gift, right? To humanity. So that, in a way, they also, an interesting point here, Souheil, is respect for women. Think about this 4,000 years ago. Today, people don't respect women. The Phoenicians respect women. And I think that's very, very well known in the Lebanese culture, even in today's environment, in some places, right? They also were equal. You and I were equal. Even if you're a king or you're a multimillionaire or you're this, we're the same. There is no lowering your head like other cultures. This is very important in negotiation. When you lower your head because you feel inferior, the Phoenicians didn't feel inferior. They didn't feel superior. They were equal. And privacy. If I make a deal with you, I won't go again with everybody and talk about it. This is a private deal and we keep it private. So in a nutshell, those were the principles.
Wonderful. You covered another question, which I found very interesting in your book, about, certain principles they had, and with regard to women, to think about it way back many thousand years ago, where women had a very important place, equality. I think that's important. And today we are dealing with a lot of these, they come under ESG and they come under minority and so on. How did they deal with that, and the fact that also language barriers must have been quite important? In one part of your book, you talk about they were trading with people that didn't have a language they could talk to, so they would leave like the goods. Could you talk a little bit about that? I mean,
yes, definitely. That's a very interesting story, because Herodotus talks about that, the ancient Greeks, and actually they invented the alphabet because of that, because they want to communicate better. But when they didn't know the language, they didn't know anything, they will just use fire and then people will come to the shore and they will leave the goods in the shore. So they will wait in the ship, they were careful, right? Prudent, because they don't know what's going to happen to them. So they wait, and once the locusts will arrive, they will look at the goods and they will put some gold in there, the locusts, without taking the goods, and so then the locusts will step away, and then the Phoenicians will come down and look at the gold. There was not enough, so they come back to the ship, and then the locusts will go and see, oh, that's not enough, so they put a little bit more because they didn't take the gold, right? And so the process will continue until it was a fair price, So what it tells us is that there is a process of tolerance, respect to other cultures. Of course, there were pirates in the time, and they have to deal with that as well. When a Phoenician ship was in the middle of the sea, that's what the history says, right? And a pirate would follow it. They will sink the chip. Why? Because they didn't want to follow them all the way. So they will have to have some minor sacrifices, you know. But in a nutshell, that was a really good way of going back and forth but they respect people. And also probably that's one nice story that Herodotus, he talks about, you know, which is one of the great historians from Greece. You know, I don't know if that's what you were talking about, and I can tell you also in the actuality what we can do with the Phoenician principles. But anyway,
Sure.
did that answer the question?
Yeah. What else? So let's move to tradables. You mentioned something called tradables. A very curious word. I mean, what does that mean? Could you give us a definition, and how does that apply to negotiation?
Of course. You know, this is if I may show this definition. Negotiation skills in actual days, you know, and there are three stories, but I will tell you one. I think you read it probably. I will talk about the fundraising negotiation. This will exemplify the tradables, and then we go into tradables. You know, the fundraising. I was hired as a consultant in a university for a research center to raise some funds, right? So these two professors, one from mathematics and physics, PhDs on that, they didn't know how to sell, so they invite me. So I went with them. So I actually identified the client all the way to the closing, right? So the first visit, we went there, and once we come in, the professors were looking at me because I was coaching them, right? So when we went to the first visit to the client, there was a Japanese corporation, and they noticed that I didn't talk about anything. I was just observing. And then I asked the Japanese, because when I come in the place, I saw everywhere around golf course pictures, you know, golf items. And I said, do you like golf? And the Japanese start talking like more than ever, right? Oh, we loved it. And our dream will be to have a country club membership in this place, you know, on that city that we were. And I say, oh, you know, this is I call this Godcidence. You know, like God with you is like not coincidence, but like Godcidence. So I said, oh, by the way, you know, I know the manager of the country club, and I can help you with that, but I cannot guarantee, because I don't know. I mean, I can just put you together. You know, I can make a call and see if they can consider you as a member, you know. So, by the way, 80% of the meeting time was already gone. So the professors look at me like, Habib, what the heck is going on? You know, you're not talking about why we are here for something else, right? And I said, I didn't say anything. The Japanese managers asked me, how can we help you? I said, well, by the way, your manufacturing line will be a great piece of equipment for a new research center, and it will be fantastic for students, for people that come in and watch, you know. So if you can donate that, by the way, it costs like $1 million, you know. So, but I didn't say that, right? So they say, you know, in these times it's kind of difficult, but let's see what happens. So 2 days passed. I called the Japanese managers with a real nice story and said, you know what? You got a meeting with the manager of the country club, and they finalized the agreement, and they got the country club membership. I asked my students, do you think because of that, the Japanese are gonna give $1 million, you know, manufacturing line to the university? No, I will never expect that, you know. I will be fooled to expect that. Well, they did. They actually did. And this is the point here. In the grand opening, there was the president of the company, there was the ambassador from Japan, all these big shots. And I was behind the scenes because I was like this Phoenician that is on the back of the scenes, you know, and I don't want any reflectors I don't want any stars or anything. I want my professors, the ones that hire me, you know, to be there on the front line, and then they hire me again, right? Even if I was hiding in the back, the president of the company was asked the ambassador of Japan, what is this person that helped us get the membership? Just think for a minute, you know, the president of the company, he was more interested in meeting me, the person that helped him, to thank him, than being with the governor and the president of that and this, you know. So that's the concept of tradables. You satisfy needs that are outside of the deal, and that in the more profound the needs are, you know, if I satisfy one of your needs, a very profound need, like these guys, for them, that was a country club membership. So the deeper the relationship becomes, you know, like if the deeper the need is, the deeper your relationship with the other one, meaning you can become like a counselor or a consultant or like a minister, you know, if you're religious, or a priest, you know, that kind of relationship, the deeper the need you satisfy. In fact, we have published a paper called The Psychology of Giving and Its Effects on Negotiation, and a scholarly paper, and we refer to the Phoenicians. They were excellent on doing this. And if you analyze your negotiations in today's environment, think about, you might do a lot of tradables. Here's the thing, you cannot expect anything in return. If you do that, then you are Roman, not Phoenician. Why? Because the duo des in Latin is I scratch your back and you scratch mine. That's not a Phoenician. You know, you do it because you don't want, you want to satisfy needs, you know. That's the very big difference. Now, what is that story has in common? I won't tell you all of the stories, but I mean, the other stories are similar. They have a spirit of abundance, which is well intertwined in the, I believe on that, in the Lebanese culture, and the generosity. I think those are the basis of our identity, you know. And we'll go into tradables in a second, into the theory. But if you look at, I mean, I can show you what the tradables are and more that in more detail with the deal methodology, how they come about. But in an essence, that's what tradables are. In other words, they are needs that you satisfy that does not have anything to do with the deal. You know, these professors were looking for a donation of a manufacturing line, and that was the deal. But in there, I didn't expect it. I satisfy a need of looking for that need of the membership, you know, of the country club, and they got it. And like this, I can tell you thousands of examples. You know, it works very nice. Does that make sense?
Yes, it sounds interesting. That what you're getting to is actually my next question. What are the mistakes in negotiation? And from what you're describing, it's almost like building that rapport, building, you know, or paying it forward, or doing something good, and building that trust before you go into just, I want to do a deal or I want to transact. Most time, maybe people forget that if they look at it holistically, maybe you can talk more about then the approach that makes you fail at negotiation, or what goes wrong, that if you adapted or adopted some of these principles to begin with, the generosity, the trying to solve problems, and there are plenty of books, obviously, that talk about that, but assuming positive intent possibly, and putting a positive spin around what you're trying to do. So I think that's quite interesting approach, rather than thinking, and I like what you said between the Roman and the Phoenician.
Yes.
So is that, so the difference today when you look at failure in negotiation, or failure in getting what you would like, you know, from a relationship, where can you pinpoint the problems?
You know, and I studied this a lot because on Transcend, which is the other book that after Negotiate Like a Phoenician, we actually went into more anthropological study of why somebody is good or bad at negotiating, no matter what you are, you know, and then we take the Phoenicians as an example, right? And one of the things that we found is that typically, you know, you don't keep your word. If you don't keep your word, you destroy yourself. Well, I still think I have the right perception of the great Lebanese, and I'm talking Lebanese, not Phoenicians, okay? I'm talking about today's, and then I go back, of the great Lebanese businessmen. Those are the guys that to me are like great in the sense, or women, you know, great in the sense that if they tell you they're gonna do something, they do it. They don't back up their word. That to me a Lebanese, okay? That to me a Phoenician from the past. In other words, you have to sacrifice something to keep your word. And sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot. Not keeping your word that's the worst thing that can happen. And that destroys your credibility, your reputation, etc. Right? And doesn't generate tradables. It's the opposite. And so the other thing is when, for instance, if you create tradables and you expect something in return, that will be the Romanesque, right? So you won't get it. For some reason, maybe anthropologically, if you're expecting something out of something, you will get disappointed. And so that's another, and also negotiating with the wrong people, you know, sometimes you are wasting your time because you are negotiating with the wrong people. So, but if you ask me where the Phoenician failed, if you ask me, if that's the case, I think, and this is, I think, because I have to do more research on that, but based on the history and based on today's environment, I think it's the ego, you know, the ego destroys you. And that what makes you great. Think about it. If the Phoenicians think about equality, we're equal, that means you have a bigger ego, because if you're with a king or a president, you're exactly the same. You don't lower your head, right? The problem is when that ego goes beyond that, and then you feel superior of the other one, and that kills you. You know, that happens to many Phoenicians, you know, in the past. And so that's the case of, you know, the Punic wars as well. There was an ego, and the ego, that because of the ego, they destroyed them. You know, they were so great, but the ego took over. So I think in a nutshell, that will be the failure, you know, your own ego, your own emotions. Don't control your emotions, or thinking about, you know, half truths. You know, you talk to somebody, and then somebody tells you, you come to a company, right? And you are in the board or whatever, and then you come in, and so you are new, and they tell you, be careful with this and this and that, and be careful with the other one. And that will make you create a ghost of the other person, and you don't even know the person. And then when you treat that person, you are treating him with half truths. So we need to come back to the discernment. You need to discern the information and make sure that you are using the right information. How many people have discredited people that are very honorable in today's environment? Many, and with the wrong information. So we need to be very careful on jumping into conclusions. And I see that with the millennials and the Gen X in today's environment. They jump quickly into conclusions, even baby boomers, you know. And why? Because we have so much misinformation. We have a lot of calumny around, you know, so that kills you as well. So being objective.
Sure, being objective. And again, I would say assuming good intent is a good start, getting your information correct, not jumping into conclusions. So today we're faced with challenges of not being able to be face-to-face or physically together, right? And maybe the relationship has been developed over time that now during the past 12 months, we have continued to nurture those relationships, but new relationships, how do you deal with negotiation when you're virtual? And is it possible? Can we learn anything again from what you have been talking about in the Phoenician negotiation?
Definitely, and I've been teaching it. I've been teaching it since COVID and before COVID, you know, because a long time ago, we did an experiment between Ecuadorians and Germans, you know, and they didn't know each other. And so they were negotiating with a computer, and what we find out as the ones that were negotiating via remote, they did better deals than the ones face-to-face. That's contrary to intuition, right? Because you say, oh, face-to-face, nonverbal communication, all of these goodies, you know, you get more connection, you get more empathy, all of that. Well, the truth of the matter is that when you separate your emotions from face-to-face, that helps you. Because if I'm negotiating with you and I get mad, I can say, you know, let's talk later. And I click, I go click, and that's it. You know, we talk to each other later. So I don't need to deal with you face-to-face. So there are many factors that help you, like filter emotions. So I think in a nutshell, you know, the electronics and the online, all of that helps you. Now, what is the experience, and this is not only intuition, of my students. My students are in Washington University, in St. Thomas University today. You know, I'm talking about last year, this year. What are their experience? I have recorded testimonials. what they tell me is that it's fantastic to have this synchronous and asynchronous teaching because it helps them for today's environment to negotiate better through internet. You know, of course, they would like to be face-to-face, but let's face it, even after COVID, we're going to be using this way of negotiating because it's very practical, you know. So yes, you want to take a plane and visit a client and drink some wine or some arak, you know, kibbeh and all that. That's great. But you can also use this. So you can have a mixed mode. So to me, it's excellent, you know, to do face-to-face, and sometimes face-to-face, you don't know the person, right? And when you are negotiating online, you love the person. When you see them in person, you don't like them too much, you know? So sometimes, you know, it has pros and cons. And we analyzed that a long time ago, but now we have more data. And I see that students, they get engaged, you know? I'm gonna publish something soon, how to engage students in a online environment, you know, from France as well, because I'm teaching a Université Catholique. So this data of these students, you know, it's like probably 100 students in total between last year and this year, is telling me that they love it because it is not a different class, it's negotiation, and they are learning how to do an interview, you know, online. And they are being interviewed for a job online. So you need to deal with that, right? And like we're doing like this, you know, and so we're trying to use as much nonverbal we can. So yes, you can, it is a good element to use, you know, the online. I won't forget about the face-to-face, but I will use also online, you know. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. I think I would like you in person, Habib, even though I met you online. So
me too. That's right.
Thank you. I think we'd like to see also some questions coming through because I'm coming at the end of my questions. So from what we've seen, then, if we think about the negotiation style, you know, is there any particular thing, any particular method, when you look at what's been written about negotiation, the best negotiator today, you know, is there anything that comes to mind? I know other than your book and methodology or talking about it, or some particular way that you think is relevant for us also today to think about?
You mean characteristics of a great negotiator? That's what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, other than exact characteristics of a great negotiator, even based on other published stuff that you've read, you know, to do your book.
Yes, definitely. I tell you, and then I tell you that, and then I answer the question that I think is very important that you asked me about the difference between the Phoenician negotiation, Harvard negotiation, and haggling, right? That would be interesting. Yes, but number one, to be a great listener. I mean, the best negotiator, I would say the greatest negotiator in the world is the best listener and best active listener, non-verbal, verbal, asking questions, you know, all of this good stuff. So that's the first thing. Once you have that, then you need to also empathize and relate to the other one somehow. I mean, physically, chemically, etc. So you do this empathy by listening. But the point on listening, and I just went through one of my students, is that once you're listening to the other and you satisfy the need of the other, you get better off your needs than if you just think about yourself, you know. And in other words, by listening to the other, you can generate options that satisfy their needs, your needs, and everybody's needs. And that's the basic, really. I mean, there is not too much science about it. If you ask me, my father, my grandfather, your father, your grandfather, I mean, everybody learned by doing that, you know, like ontologically, you know, like I teach you, listen to the client, see what he wants, and then maybe he's wrong with what he wants if you're consulting, right? Then you ask the questions. The question is what questions to formulate. That's the question. And then you formulate questions to bring the client his needs to satisfy the needs. And if you don't satisfy it, that's the key. You know, you send it to somebody else that you know is reputable. Why? Because you want to be honest. And those clients will come back to you. You know, but so that will be, to me, I mean, in a quick nutshell, what will be. And I'll ask everybody, and I don't know if I can see the yes or no. You can say yes or no in the chat, you know. If you, I want to tell you a classic, because you asked me about books, right? And you probably read this. A classic example of two oranges. Just think about this, okay? You have two oranges and you have two kids, okay? Or two daughters, all right? And you don't want any oranges. The oranges are exactly the same size, okay? And you're the father or the mother, who, it doesn't matter. You don't want any oranges, okay? So what would be win-win? To give one orange to each of them? Yes or no? Yeah.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Sounds like it, right? Okay. All right. That's what typically 90, 80, 10, 100% of my students say, yes, that's right. Well, no, really. Why? Because I didn't ask them why you need it, you know? And if one of my daughters needed to make a juice, then I give her the whole pulp of the two oranges, right? As long as the other one needs to make a cake. So I give the skin, right? So I give 100% of the skin of the oranges to one, and I give the pulp to the other one. That sounds really great, right? That's Harvard methodology in a nutshell. You ask the other one, why do you want the orange? Well, I wanted to drink an orange juice. Okay, and you? I want to make a cake. Ah, okay. I generate an option. I give 100% of the peeling of the skin to one, and 100% of the pulp to the other one. Now, how does that compare to the Phoenician negotiation? You will ask them, what about the future? Are you going to leave any oranges for the future? No. Oh, you need to seed the orange for the next generations. So Phoenicians goes more transcendental negotiations, where you not only care about you care about the next generation, and that's a big difference. And in order to do that, you need to go to the pillars of the transcendental negotiation, which are discernment, justice, prudence. How many of you are prudent? I mean, that's something that we can learn, actually, Fair, being fair as well. And let me show you here. I will show you quickly so that you can ask me more questions. The deal methodology, okay? The deal methodology is how to get to a deal quickly. You get the drivers, you drive, what drives the negotiation from one end and the other. Not only the interest behind the position. Why do you want an orange? Oh, I want an orange because I want to make an orange juice. Okay, that's the interest. But the driver may be another one. Maybe the one daughter, she just want to kill the other daughter. I mean, literally. She doesn't want, she's mad at her. So the driver is different. So you need to understand the driver, even if you know the interest. Entrapments are objections, internal or external. For instance, some people go and say a new employee, he's going to get a raise, a salary increase. And then he might think internally, well, I don't deserve it, probably, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes into the negotiation, he's killing himself, because that's an entrapment. Analysis are the 6 P's of negotiation. In marketing, there are 4 P's. In negotiation, we give you more P's for the same price. I'm kidding, okay? So where is the negotiation bottleneck? In the person, in the process, the problem, prognosis, where is it? So that's the 6 P's. And then leverage is where the, tradables came in. Tradables, if you take the deal methodology out of tradables, what do you get left with? Trades of the deal. So that's the beam of the deal. The tradables are what is the foundations of deals, That's what it is. These Phoenicians make a tradable to this one. So he talks to everybody in his community. So he creates a reputation with this community. They don't even know this guy, okay? Let's say this is John, okay? Hannah. And so Hannah is a great guy because he gave a tradable. So he talks about, this Hannah is so great. And then he gives a tradable to another one. So he creates a great reputation with indirect reciprocity. That's the point. Okay. And these are the pillars I was telling you about. And then I answer more questions. To make a Phoenician negotiation, you need to be prudent, doing the rule of doing the right thing. I've seen so many in the diaspora, you know, and everywhere. I see so many new generations that they actually want to say something really bad and they want to say it. And that's not the right time, the right person, the right thing to say. So that kills you. And that goes back to the first question, right? And then this is another thing, resilience to adversity. How many times we said the Lebanese are so resilient? Well, that's part of the fortitude of the Phoenician negotiation. You need to be really strong internally, not externally. And psychic, you know, and also the Maltese is very resilient, which is also Phoenician descendant, you know, it has some Phoenician culture. Justice, to transcend justice is absolute. It's not relative. In other words, I remember my father when there was a big devaluation when I live in Mexico, okay? Now I live in the US, but I remember I would say I was a very young, selfish kid, you know, so I wanted to make as much money and greedy, right? For my dad's store and all that. So the devaluation came and I said to my dad, I'm going to increase all the prices and I'm going to put it in dollars and I'm going to increase 30%. You know what my dad told me? Haram. Why are you going to do this to the people? This is not fair. That's where justice comes, you know? Fairness in the negotiation is not win-win, it's different. You probably win more and the other one win more, but not everybody. And then discernment, you need to understand what is negotiable, what is not, and what doesn't need to be negotiated. Because sometimes you lose your time with things that are non-negotiable or you don't need to negotiate, you know? And temperance, that's a lot of us, we have that problem, right? That's the willpower to avoid tantrums. How many times in a negotiation you say, I don't want to do a business with this guy, I hate this, and you step out and you lose the business and you lose the relationship. Why? Because you tantrum. Those are the failing elements of Phoenician, I think, because if you feel so great, your ego is so great, you feel the best, everybody is not the best. And let me tell you, Phoenicians really appreciated intellectuals, you know. That's the issue today in our Lebanese communities. They don't, and I'm sorry, I'm very proud Lebanese, believe me. If somebody's proud and always talking about Lebanon, is myself. However, one of our biggest failures is that we actually don't help the Lebanese. You know, one Mexican president said, and probably you know this, if you don't have a Lebanese friend, find one, right? A Mexican president. I tell the Lebanese, we should find a Lebanese friend. That's the problem. Lebanese are friends. This is my reflections for all these years of study. The Lebanese are more friends with others than with Lebanese, you know, and that's a shame, you know, but anyway, this is a nice, anyway, that's about the, I have more things, but I mean, you can ask me questions.
Yeah, thank you, Habib. With life, you know, you have these kind of Lebanese that help and support. So
I'm so happy.
I'm very proud of our association, and there are a lot of great Lebanese. One question that came was regarding, is there a difference in negotiation between men and women, or if, I guess, is gender play a role in negotiation? I guess that's a better way of putting it.
Well, yeah, in other words, in my research, I found it shouldn't be a difference, but let me just back up and say, you know, what makes you a great negotiator? And I think a lot of the things that make you a great negotiator is the need, you know. So why the Phoenicians were great negotiators? Why all these cultures, you know, around the world? Because they have the need to get out, you know, they need to do that. So they need to develop these skills, right? In that sense, women in history, they haven't had the right place they should deserve. Like Phoenicians, exactly the same, you know, they should be in the right place. In other words, they should respect, every culture should respect women. So because of that, they also develop these skills more, and also their mothers. And so in my experience, these are my explanations why I believe they are, but they shouldn't, because everybody should be the same, right? However, I've seen in my experiments that women are much better negotiators than men. And why? Because they're more specific. you know, if you are going to something in some negotiation, they ask you so many questions, you know, they're good listeners. So whereas us as men, we just go and want to buy the thing and that's it, you know. I want a black pant, you know, okay, that's all I want, a pair of jeans, and that's it. Do you want it this other color, this other size? No, 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 I want that. If you go with a woman, they said, well, do you want a red dress or a blue dress? She said, I want a pink dress, you know. So they generate so many options. So you have to generate so many options. They take more time, women, in average than men to get to a negotiation. Why? Because they think it over and they prepare it and so on. So in principle, those are the best practices that I've seen, right? Of course, there are some women that shopaholic and men shopaholic, and they go to the store and they purchase everything that they don't need, you know. So that will make them a good negotiator. But yes, in general, women are more like lawyers negotiating, you know. They're very specific. I mean, why do you want this? And I want to know this. And they have more of a philosophy of life, or more of a vision. That's in my experience, you know.
Sure, sure. I don't negotiate with my wife. I just say, yes, honey. That's what I think.
Me neither, and especially a Phoenician as well. But you know, there's one thing. If I go and prepare for a negotiation, the typical thing is for every minute of negotiation, you need at least 1 minute of preparation. When you are with a woman, you need at least 10 minutes. Okay, for every minute, you need 10 minutes. Not only a woman, a different culture. You know, so in other words, if you are one-on-one, you need more time to prepare because they will come back with more options, etc. Right? So that's in general. I don't know if I answered.
A lot of preparation. Yeah, you need preparation. Look, we got a question about this reputation that maybe, you know, that the Lebanese are weird dealers, and some people may refer to it as the you know, our Phoenician maybe ancestry, if we can say that, and sometimes it may sound derogatory. Right? Not necessarily flattering. You know, what are your thoughts?
Yes, that's a good question, because in 2008, I was in Spain, in Madrid, and I was in a radio station, and the Spaniards, that's the first question they asked me. Say, well, you're talking about the best practice of Phoenicians. Let me ask you, they were like taking advantage of everybody, right? I say, no. That's, and I was in a public radio, okay? I said, that's the top of the iceberg. That's what you see. Because you see they are so skillful, then you infer they are going to take advantage of me because I'm not skillful, right? And that's what they see. However, I asked the question, how come, you know, we are talking about the best practice of negotiation of commerce people? I mean, just think about it. I love commerce people because all of us, we come from there, right? But think about this. If you are just dealing and willing, how are you going to think about how this culture is going to transcend? Because they didn't disappear, believe me. The Phoenicians did not disappear. They are all over, you know, that's like a spirit. So they are all over the Mediterranean. They're all over Europe, Spain, everywhere. So how will they, I mean, if they were such as, you know, taking advantage of everybody, how will they build this, you know, this great empire, commercial empire? It's impossible, right? Because there are some proofs that, for instance, when they went to Barcelona, what they did is that they not only sell, but they need to build a port. They need to build a port. So they need to become builders. But they need to become explorers because they need to get some mines from England. So they need to get explorers. They need to become miners. They need to do all of that to sell one thing. And I asked the business people all over the world, you know, more than 160 cultures have listened to me on Phoenicians, okay? I said, will you do that for your clients? I said, no. I just straight, you know. So Phoenicians will invest a lot for their clients. So what you're looking at is the top of the iceberg, and we need to change that perception. In fact, I am teaching everywhere, you know, the Phoenician methodology, and I hope this will change minds and people are more excited about, you know, knowing more about Phoenician culture. And I warn them, you know, I say, this is the best practices. Of course, there were evil, bad, and good, like in every culture. What I'm taking is the best practices, you know, and so we have also bad practices, and that's not really good Phoenicians. And by the way, when you see, I was just thinking, I reflect on this conference, when I was on this webinar, when I see somebody in Lebanon that is not as Phoenician as he should be, I thought, well, maybe he's too Roman, you know. You know, so remember, we have a mixture of so many cultures in Lebanon, right? So we went through so many cultures. So that means within all of that, some of us, we have this Phoenician spirit, some of us won't. So that's normal. But I think the Phoenician spirit will prevail, you know, definitely.
Sure.
I don't know if I answered the question.
Thank you. I mean, it sounds to me when you describe the Phoenicians and what they did, they created a platform, they sourced products from all over and tried to just, you know, make a marketplace actually and translate it. So when you think about it, how do we, and the technology at the time, you know, you needed the ships to move them. You need, oh, that's not new. They created the language. And today in the world of online and in the world of all that, you know, models that can predict what you want, it's interesting. Where does that negotiation go? You know, do we really need to think about negotiation, or are all these algorithms, you know, kind of doing that for us? I mean, just
yes. I mean, yes, we need to think about negotiation because, in fact, you know, you always think about relationship and results, right? If you want to have great results and great relationship, then you need to think about negotiation. If you just want results, you don't want any relationship, then just kill everything and that's it. I mean, you can just get the results, but that's not real life. Real life is humanity. We need humanity back. And that's what they take away from us on COVID, right? And we will come back to that, but we're using all this media and we still need negotiation, I think. Is that your question? I mean, that's because...
No, it is. I mean, one just because one question came through, I mean, on the basis of earlier what you were talking about on the Phoenicians, is on that basis, are the Chinese the new Phoenicians? We got the question from Lemi. Hi, Lemi.
Well, I'm teaching now like a group of Chinese, you know, from actually online, you know, and they are, I mean, my students, okay, when I am teaching them how to generate options, how to do that, how not to just decrease the price. So I won't say exactly they are the new Phoenicians, because Phoenicians, you know, you need to generate options, and it's not only cut the lowest price. And so they might have some, I don't want to stereotype, you know, but lowering the price and you know, killing the distributors and doing that, I don't think so. I mean, I think they need, because I have from all over China, I have all these managers from oil and gas. And when the Olympic Games were there, I had to teach them how to cross-cultural negotiate. And I did experiments with people from all over China. I'm not just making up this, you know, this experiment. And I remember that I have a game theory approach to negotiation, where an exercise. And I remember that they went for the lower price, all of them. So that's not negotiate like a Phoenician, you know, definitely. That will not. The new Phoenicians are all the people that have respect for others. And this is my ideal, okay? Because you might think you are Phoenician, but you are taking advantage of others. You are not responsible. You say something and you do other things, so you are not Phoenician. You know, that's like, I would say that's like a spirit, okay? I'm not talking about blood or anything like that. I'm talking about the best practice of the Phoenicians in the past. So if you follow that, I know French clients of mine, they are very Phoenicians. And if we have time, I tell you, but okay, go ahead. I don't know if I answered the question.
No, thank you. I mean, I've got a couple of more questions that are coming from the audience, which is great.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, one is, I mean, you've described, I'm going to read it out loud, the Phoenicians as very skilled people with lots of generosity and empathy. How did their civilization fall then?
If you look at history, how they disappear, that's what you say, or fall, that not disappear, where all these wars were happening. Some people think that the Phoenicians went very low profile. You know, they were low profile in general, low profile, and then they conquer economically all the Mediterranean. But then think about it: if there are, if You know, they came from Rome and they destroyed everything in Carthage. So some people think, which I don't believe it yet until, well, I believe it, but I don't see elements, you know, physical elements, is that time Phoenicians went all the way to America and everywhere, you know, because it's like this bundle because of that. There is one thing that I think is very important, and I learned this when I went to Lebanon last year. I know that Phoenicians from history, they were very united when all of them were going to be attacked by somebody else. However, and they were invincible, you know, nobody will deal with them because they were united. However, they were independent, very independent. Each of them, Tyre, Sidon, all of them were independent, right? And what I learned, and I didn't like of the history, is that sometimes not only they compete so much with each other, but maybe they attack each other in different ways. And that's when they start decreasing, when they start attacking the ones from Sidon, the ones from Tyre, to the others, you know, and making alliance with different, you know, governments overseas. Sounds familiar? And so, you know, that is what I think that's what start weakening the network of the Phoenician, because you make alliances with somebody that is not Phoenician, and then you go against your own Phoenicians. I think that sounds familiar today, but anyway, I think that's our weakness. We should be united.
Sure. So we're talking, I'm not going to talk politics, but just to mention decentralized but united. That's
exactly, that's what I mean.
Another discussion for politics. And we have another question. I don't know if it's the Lebanese are people of conviction and passionate in all that they do and initiate. Is this a Phoenician practice? Did you see that?
Yes. Well, I tell you one other practice. Passionate about what you do, passionate about what you are doing, not only yourself, but also the process or whatever. But also, you know, I believe they are people of faith, you know, and Phoenicians also were people of faith. They believe on their gods or whatever, you know, but everywhere they went, they built a temple, you know, for their gods. So what does that mean? That means that they not only believe in the person as, you know, the human, but also in somebody else and in gods, and they have it really present in their lives. And I've seen, no matter what religion they are, the Lebanese are very faithful in their own, you know, practicing. And that also is very coherent with your family and with your practices. And all of that comes from Phoenician time, definitely. So you might be more Phoenician than you think, you know, and some people are not necessarily Lebanese, but they are Phoenicians, you know. You will be surprised. And this has been proven with a DNA test, you know. Dr. Salua and they've done so many studies, and I haven't done mine. I have a joke on that, but I keep it for the end, you know. Okay, go ahead. I mean, did that make sense, what I'm saying?
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. I mean, I haven't done mine. I'm just afraid that I may not be Phoenician, and I'm convincing myself that I am, but I don't know. Look, we're coming to the end of our talk, and I don't see any more questions, but probably maybe we'll touch just one minute or two on life. I mean, you got to know us, we discussed it. We are global, and we definitely have pillars. We talked about pillars. Mm-hmm. Is there any thought that you would have? And definitely, we don't believe in what is said usually, that the Lebanese don't help each other. We have a deep belief that we do help each other. We also want to make sure that the young generation is not given that bad impression. And I agree with you. There are a number of things that you mentioned today, which is assume positive intent, think about giving before, you know, doing a deal or receiving. You know, after all, that's not just in negotiation, but that's in your personal life. What can you, from what you know a bit about our association, is there anything that you could shed some light and say, look, continue to do this, or this is what the Phoenicians would have done?
Yes,
yes. They would have such an association.
That's great. You know, actually, based on what I've done as a research, I then, one of the professors in Spain, he got a PhD based on negotiate like a Phoenician, you know, in Seu San Pablo in Madrid. And he asked me, you know, let's check in the society of you know, 5,000 families, the statistical analysis of 5,000 families, and see if they transcend. And so out of that study, we came up with some type of people depending on the best practices and what are the Phoenicians or who will be Phoenician, you know, and I want to share that with you. So in that, you know, the builders of legacy, okay, and I make a parenthesis here, not all Lebanese don't help Lebanese, obviously, you know, I know, and those are more Phoenicians, okay, in my definition. So the builders of legacy, you know, we have, out of this study of 5,000 families, okay, we have a cluster analysis, and then we got, you know, which one has the characteristics, which has to do with ethics towards themselves and towards the institution. It has to do with resistance, resilience, you know, and also with prudence, okay? And so based on those characters, we found some people call it the climbers. And then those are the people in life that they are going there and just trying to look for the golden cow, and they die in the abysm of opportunism, okay? And they never do anything in life. Then you have the free riders. A lot of millennials, I'm sorry, I mean, a lot of millennials wants to, I ask millennials, what do you want to do? I mean, I want to change life. So they like to transcend. So they have the potential, like the Phoenicians, but with zero energy, you know? So those are the free riders. Then the pretenders, we have a lot of these in all communities, you know, are the people that want to be what they are not. If you are in any of these three, you won't transcend. You have a chance to build a legacy like the Phoenicians. And that's where I believe, you know, we can be. Now, in my final exposition, what I wanted to show you is for the Phoenician identity. You know, I believe we can have a Phoenician identity, you know, which is, are you watching at my thing here? No, right? Okay, let's see. This is like, I believe, I was thinking a lot about this. We have a Phoenician identity. We haven't found it, but we like to find it. Statistically, this is a lot of work, you know. It will be work to understand our own identity and leave it to the future generation, a powerful tool to understand oneself. However, this Phoenician identity is a line of research will be a new academic discipline. I'm working this with a professor in Spain to understand the human becoming. It will improve the perspective of contemporary sociology, which is, in as much as it will connect the generations of humanity now with a permanent element, the identity of the ancients. We cannot forget who we are. That's what I would tell the young generation, you know, against the myth of progress. So that's where we are. And I believe you see, that's a Phoenician new and today and in the future, right? So you have all my information there. And I really believe that the Phoenician spirit is still there. And you can find it in people all over the world, not only because they travel all over, you know, so not only travel themselves, but the diaspora, you know, it's all over as well. And I've seen the diaspora keeping that flame, you know, and sometimes it's the son of the son of the son. It's not even the father, you know. So they want to know more about that. And I had last year a nice webinar with the youth from Lebanon, a lot of Lebanese. And so I think that we can help each other by helping the youth, you know, because if we lose the youth, we lose everything, and we lose Phoenician, you know, and that's what I would say, you know.
Habib, I can't thank you enough for this wonderful hour with you. I've learned a lot. I mean, even though I read your book, and I always think that I've read enough about the Phoenicians, but there's lots to learn from this civilization and other civilization. I think we don't have, you know, any particular characteristic that is only to the Phoenicians or Lebanese or any particular that. I think it's all great to learn from other people and to be able to implement that. So on behalf of LIFE and all the members that attended and others, I thank you very much. And if there is nothing else, we'd love to stay in touch. And
Yes.
Thank you all for attending.
Thank you. And I just say that, I mean, in a word, that what can we do is the inculturization, you know, like the Phoenicians did with all the cultures, bring their culture to other cultures, you know, and that's what we need to do. We, that after so many years after that, you know, 5,000, 6,000 years, that's the point, you know, whatever your talents are, bring those talents and accompany those talents with inculturization, bring your culture in, you know, to your, whatever you're doing. So I'm doing that through academia, through my students worldwide. And I'm so happy to be able to share with Lebanese, you know, because most of the time are non-Lebanese. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Habib. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thank
Bye.
you.